Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. I've got with me Todd Chapman and Rich Balot. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going fantastic. I got a little bit here about you. So, Rich Balot founded ABC Phones of North Carolina Incorporated, DBA Victra, in October of 1996. As a freshman in college, under his guidance, the company has grown from a single store location to more than 1,500 locations across 49 states. Victra has become Verizon's largest exclusive premier retailer, and Rich is considered a thought leader within the industry and among his peers. Rich is an active member in Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and a board member at Vidant Medical Center in Greenville, North Carolina. He also volunteers with numerous local charities, participating with his family to give back. Rich holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from East Carolina University. Rich is married and has 4 children. He enjoys spending time with his family and watching his children play sports. So hopefully we did okay on the intro. That's always the biggest part. Are we going to get the intro right?
It sounded fantastic to me. Made me sound better than I probably am.
That's how I feel about it. What happens to me too. So I always like to hear the intro, and I'll have you know I did practice it a few times before we got on the call. So
10 out of 10. Way to go.
There you go. So your kids play sports. How old are the kids?
They're getting older. It's amazing how that happens. 18 and 17 boys, 15 just about to turn 16 in a few days, and 13 girls. So 2 boys, 2 girls. Okay,
so they're getting out of the house.
Yeah, my oldest is just finished his first semester in college. Came home last night, and yeah, we're getting close. I'm counting down the time until we're empty nesters. I'm counting down in an excited way. My wife's counting down in a non-excited way, and it all works out.
This is an interesting thing. I've got 3 kids, a girl and 2 boys. My youngest is 10 months old. So, you know what? We started it over. I saw the eyebrows lift like, oh, man, look what you did to yourself. You really hurt yourself.
My dad used to say that's what we call accidents cause people.
There you go. Accidents cause people. I love it. Great. So mine are just getting there. My like I said, my oldest is 8. But you know what? I love the I'm not into the teens yet, but I love this era of like 5, 6, 7, 8's kind of pushing it a little bit. But just this, oh, I love you, Dad. You're the greatest, Dad. I want to hang out with you, Dad. This is a great time.
Enjoy it while it lasts, because all of a sudden they become teenagers, and it doesn't. I should say the boys are really good and have been great for me. That my girls have been challenging when it comes to that part. But I'm told they'll come back when they're in their 20s.
Well, that's something to look forward to. So you've got this great business. You've got 1,500 store locations across the U.S. From what I understand, you do about $1 billion in revenue. Is that correct?
Those numbers are a little bit off. We're about three times that.
Okay, so you're doing $3 billion in revenue.
Yes.
Okay, so you're doing $3 billion in revenue. So you're not a small company anymore.
No.
I saw a LinkedIn post that you had put out about a month ago, and it caught my eye. You were at your store in I think Greensville, North Carolina, and you're working with your team. You're working in the store, and then somebody puts a message out on your post, and they say, hey, I'm having a little bit of issue, with some kind of something going on with my service. Can you help me out? you're running a $3 billion organization, you throw your email out into the reply and say, get with me, I'm going to help you get this taken care of. That seems extraordinary for a leader of a company of your size, responding, answering, giving the email. It even made me think like, geez, maybe I should be more customer focused when I read that. What is it that drives that kind of passion? Because I got to imagine so many listeners, so many people on the call are thinking, gosh, I don't have time for one little customer. I don't have time to do that. What drives that?
Yeah, look, and I remember the exact situation you're talking about, and he did reach out. We were able to take care of him. Look, to me, I started off, as a founder, as an entrepreneur. I built this from one store to 1,500. So I know how to do all the jobs. I didn't grow up super wealthy. I grew up poor. And I grew up learning that it's okay to clean the toilets. And I still will stop at a store and clean the toilets if they need to be cleaned, right? And so if I can clean the toilets, I can sure as heck take care of my customers. And so the good news is my staff does an amazing job. But I put my phone number and email address out there all the time for customers to call me, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff. The only reason I'm on social media for the most part is so customers can reach me. Because with stores in 49 states, we're going to have screw ups from time to time. And but I only get, believe it or not, I only get about 2 customers a month that actually get to me where they actually need help. And considering we do several million transactions a year, that's pretty darn good. So the reason I can put my information out there is because most of the time they don't need it. So when they do, hey, I'd rather them reach out to me and solve their problem than worry about social media these days. Getting out there and, people will blast you on social media. I'm appreciative when people reach out and give me a chance to fix it. What I don't like is when customers just go on social media and say how bad an experience was without giving you a chance to fix it, because we're all humans. And retail, which is, my stores are Verizon wireless stores, basically, right? You wouldn't see a sign that says Victra. You'll see a sign that says Verizon, and we operate the store for them as an authorized retailer. And we have more stores than Verizon does themselves these days. And so we have to represent that brand in a strong way. And when customers have a problem, just give me a chance to fix it, because we're all human. People are going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. Systems, happen. We have new employees. And like I said, retail's hard. Post-pandemic, retail's been really hard, and customers particularly are actually quite rough on my staff. And so if I have a chance to make their life easier, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, you're in the battle on the front line still at this point. So you're down in Greensville, you're in the store. You as the CEO are training. What does that look like for the store? How do you get into that? Is that like a day that you look forward to? What happens?
Yeah. So Black Friday is the day we're talking about. So I look forward to it because it is, if not the busiest day, one of the busiest days of the year. And so, and it's also a tough time because people don't want to work the day after Thanksgiving. They want to sit at home, and have a full tummy of turkey, right?
Right.
And so getting out there and leading the way for my team is so important. And so I want to be on the front lines. And honestly, I'm not training that day as much as I'm there to support, talk to customers, keep them occupied, do some sales. I can still do all the sales in the company. I know how to do everything. Believe it or not, you'll laugh at this. My system access is restricted, so I can't actually help the customers all the way through because Verizon's got such high security that if you don't log in every 2 weeks, it locks you out. And as the CEO, I still have a day job to do, so I'm not helping customers every 2 weeks. So that day I'm in there talking to customers, pre-selling, supporting the team, making sure everything's running smoothly, and having fun with them as well. And it's, not just me, but it's my other top leaders are around the country doing the same thing. So I want my leaders in the stores on the front line on our busiest days, supporting our team and having fun.
That's awesome. You mentioned just your leadership team and those who represent. I mean, obviously, when you go from one store to as many stores as you have now, over 1,500 locations, talk about how do you build a team to that point? Because I think a lot of our entrepreneurial listeners, they might be, smaller teams potentially to, maybe a few dozen people. And I think one of the biggest things when you're an entrepreneur is how important it is to build the right people around you and the right seats and trusting those folks to get the job done like you would, right? I think a lot of people stay in that 1 to 2, like, maybe, if they're a service provider, 1 truck, right? Because it's easier to manage that crew when you're in the crew lead and you're kind of in it. but obviously you can't scale and you can't get to that point. So talk about the scalability and reaching to the point and how important that building that leadership team is, and what does that look like for you today? Because there's obviously a lot of stores, a lot of people that you have to trust.
Yeah, great question. So look, obviously building a team, I would tell you, is the most important job of a CEO, right? And there's only 5 jobs of a CEO. We can talk about that later if you want, in my opinion, that I learned from my coach, Mark Moses. But to me, building the team is the number one job, and you have to hire the best people that you can afford, maybe stretch yourself a little bit, and then let them do their job. And particularly when it comes to sales, I find most entrepreneurs make the mistake that they think that their job is to run sales and run the company. And the way I look at that, and I learned this from a guy named Jack Daly, if you're running sales, then who's running the company? And if you're running the company, then who's running sales? Because you can't do both at the same time. And so, but I find entrepreneurs oftentimes don't give enough trust, and they don't know how to hire people. Nobody's taught them how to do a proper interview and how to find that right person. And it's always easier if you can to grow from within, but sometimes you have to go from outside, because oftentimes the people who take you from A to B can't get you from B to C. And so over my career, going from 1 store to 2 to 3 to 4 to 100 to 300 to 600 to 1,000 to 1,500 plus, I've had to constantly update and improve my leadership team. And I try and take care of the people who have been loyal to me and be loyal to them. But that loyalty doesn't mean they have that job for life. It means I'm going to make sure I give them a respectful landing, hopefully within the company or outside the company, set them up for success. And the loyalty for me has to be to all the employees, not just to one. And so oftentimes, and by the way, every time I talk to CEOs who started off, one of their biggest challenges is firing their best friend who's worked for them for 10 years, but just can't get them to the next level. And I had to do it myself. And so building that leadership team, you have that loyalty of the group that started with you, but sometimes you're going to have to upgrade that team as you grow.
That's fantastic. You know, I'm a huge Jack Daly fan as well. And Jack's a great guy. I know that when last year when the Phillies were trying to get to the World Series, I believe he was sitting there in the stadium and they were playing Houston, and I'm from Houston. So at the time I was pulling for Houston, and I think I was texting him like, hey, I'm glad that your team isn't winning tonight. And I don't think he was very happy about that. But he is great for sales. Like his books are off the charts. Just a great speaker, motivate. You know, sometimes when I hear him speak, he goes no microphone, all raw, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's awesome. And you mentioned, I think that's fantastic. As a CEO, you can't run the business and run sales at both times. You also mentioned Mark Moses, CEO Coaching International, and the job description of a CEO. Why don't you share that with us? I think that's a great piece as well.
Sure. Let's get out there. Hopefully I can remember all 5 today, right? So obviously we said the right team. So the right people in the right positions, both who report to you and 1 level below. 2, cash. Are you making it and do you have it? So there's a difference between P&L and cash flow. And so sometimes you can have a positive P&L but still have no money in the bank. 3 is going to be continue your own education. And these are not in any particular order. Continue your own education. 4 is the mission vision. And I say that not in a technical sense, but follow me. Here's where we're going. Everyone follow me. I'm going to take you to the promised land of achieving this goal. And then 5 is going to be key relationships. And so anybody who can put you in business and put you out of business. So obvious ones are your attorney, your accountant. The less obvious ones are your largest customer, and the people who really can make a big difference in your company's career. And so you should have key relationships that you manage. Everything else, and this is the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to do, you give to somebody else in the company. You empower them to handle those things. Like my admin, Nicole, who's been with me for a long time, she owns my calendar. People are like, hey, are you free? And I'm like, I don't know. I got to look on the phone. And then if you ask, I'm like, talk to you guys, probably got pushed to Nicole, scheduled through Nicole.
Yep.
And so and it allows me to have time to think. One of the things I find most entrepreneurs and most CEOs don't do is schedule themselves enough time to think, because we really shouldn't be focused on today. We should be focused on next year and the year after and 5 years down the road. And oftentimes we're so involved in the day to day and don't give ourselves time to think that we lose our entrepreneurial edge, which is we do think differently than other people. ADHD is common in almost all entrepreneurs and CEOs, the good ones, and it becomes a super weapon for us, even though when you're younger, it's a problem in school. But we don't give ourselves time to empower that superpower by giving ourselves time to think. And so if you just do those 5 jobs and push everything else out to somebody else, it gives you time to think. Now, I realize you can't do that when you're first starting off, but when you start cranking out a few $1 million in revenue, that's when you have to start, adding these things on, because it makes all the difference in the world. Because if you don't hire an assistant, you are your assistant. Jack Daly would say that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so you can't be doing all these tedious tasks and be figuring how you're going to grow.
Yeah, I love that. So key relationships, managing key relationships. I think, for an entrepreneur who's getting going in business, I think they might think like, oh man, that means that I need to take care of all my customers, all my biggest customers, my medium-sized customers. Does that mean I'm on the front line every time there's a customer issue? How would you coach someone making that few $1 million, trying to get to 10, 15 million in revenue, about those key relationships? Which ones are the most important? Which ones do you invest your time in as a CEO following that job description model?
Yeah. So look, on the customer side, it's going to be the ones that if you lose, they're going to put you out of business, or it's going to be real painful. And that doesn't mean that you're running the day-to-day for that customer. It means you have the relationship top to top, that they know they can call you. You schedule a meeting with them once or twice a year. Maybe you send them a Christmas card, take them out to lunch once a year. You're just making sure that they know if your sales rep screws up, they can come to you. And hopefully they have enough respect that if your sales rep screws up, they will come to you, because you said, hey guys, I'm always here. And then you're going to check in with them once or twice a year to make sure things are good. You can't do that with every customer in the organization, but your biggest ones. And that also goes on your vendors too, right? Just because you have somebody buying for you or whatever, you want to talk to your largest vendor, because if you lose them, it can be just as painful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love that, because what you're saying is you don't have to get in there and run the operations for your biggest customer. You're just making yourself available to solve problems and grow as issues come up. On your journey, it looks like you guys are involved in philanthropy. You're involved with multiple charities. You participate in these with your family. What does giving back mean to you? I know you said you grew up from humble roots. You didn't grow up rich. You've built everything that you've done. What does giving back mean to you today?
Yeah, look, we started our company with $5,000 total, and that was a lot. That was a stretch, right? So, and I think half of it was on credit cards. So, yeah, we definitely started out humble. But look, giving back, is so important, right? I don't want my kids to be entitled. I'm not sure if I can curse on this or not, so we'll just say A words. And so part of the way we keep them grounded is, one, they have to get jobs before they turn 16 years old, and two, we demonstrate, through charitable work, how important it is. My wife runs a charity, I'm super proud of her, called Haven at Blue Creek, which is a women's only alcohol and substance abuse treatment center that's completely free. She charges people nothing to go there and get treatment, and it's world class. It's very high level of care, inpatient. And then I'm also the president of a Catholic high school, which makes total sense since I'm Jewish. And so we support a Catholic high school that we've really helped get behind local and help education in a local community. And then as the company is Victra, we pick a big charity every year. This year we partnered with the Ron Clark Academy, which if you're not familiar with it, you should look it up. It's an amazing school in Atlanta, Georgia, run by a gentleman named Ron Clark and his partner, Kim Bearden, where they don't just teach students, they teach teachers. They've had over 100,000 educators from around the world go there and learn better ways to teach. And when they implement his systems, these schools go from bottom of the barrel to top inside of a few year transition, just by teaching teachers not new content, but better ways of delivering the content, and better ways of really getting the results. And so it's an amazing place. By the way, transformational experience. If you ever have a chance to go there and visit, it's one of those places you go and it changes you for good. And so yeah, giving back is, and my company does so many other things. We volunteer at the food bank. We work at the soup kitchens. We do all kinds of other things in our local communities as well. So many that I can't even recall, but on the major level, those are the big ones that we try and support. But you have to do it because it's our job in society, right? I mean,
Yeah.
those who have great responsibility, like from Spider-Man said, right? So,
Yep.
there you go.
I love that, man. I love that. And I love to always get into the why. My why is change the world. And that's the mission of my company, change the world. We do that through giving back. You talk about, your big, hairy, audacious goal or what that is. But my goal for my business is $100 million a year to charity, right? So that's what I'm focused on. And so out of our profit, we give. I love this Haven at Blue Creek. My dad was an alcoholic for 44 years. So, without, amazing organizations like that, my dad wouldn't be clean and sober. And I think that, life controlling substance abuse issues, they affect every single person's family, no matter where you are on the spectrum. And I think that that's huge. So I definitely applaud the give back. And as an entrepreneur, as you're growing, sometimes it's hard to give back. Sometimes it's hard to put that money, out of your business. But I think it builds, a purpose greater than just, putting wealth in the owner's pocket or wealth in the top level team's pocket. Like it really starts to change things. So that's my why. I'm a huge believer in giving back. And what's your why? What keeps getting you up out of bed every morning? What keeps you in that store in Greensville? What keeps you connecting with those customers, building your teams? What is that?
Well, first of all, Dave, I'll let my wife know that we don't need $100 million a year from her, but I'll let her know she can count on $1 million a year from Dave. No problem.
Listen. Put me in touch with her, and we're gonna make some donations.
I appreciate that. And look, my wife is in recovery. She's an addict. She's been sober now 5 years, and so that's why we're so passionate about that. And look, addiction is everybody has an addict, whether it's an alcoholic or an addict from drugs in their life, and it's just the way the world is today. And so it's definitely part of our mission there. Look, my personal why is helping others, and I'm not giving as much as you yet. I sounds like I need to step it up a little bit. We're doing what we can right now, but I came back to work. I'd retired at 39 years old, and came back to work a few years later because my company was not performing well. I'd sold it to private equity. We've since bought it back, but I came back because I cared about my employees. And I wanted to see them grow and develop. And so I work today to help others. So I, besides work, I speak at universities, high schools, other places at least once a month. That's part of my annual planning process for myself, and making sure I can give to the next generation. I coach a little bit here or there. I don't have time to be a full-time coach. If I did, Mark Moses would hire me at CEO Coaching and Scribe. And so we do what we can, though. And then I do a lot of giving, like you said, financially. I'm not up to the level you are yet. It sounds like I need to step up my game, like I said, but we do a lot of financial support for a lot of people in our community. I'm not big enough to change the world yet, but I can change Eastern North Carolina, which is a poor part of the U.S. And so we do that. And like I said, part of it's through financial support. Part of it's through coaching. And I don't mean coaching like coaching other entrepreneurs, but just coaching, the Catholic high schools. Honestly, there's a lot of coaching, right? It's teaching them how to run a school like a business. I don't mean on the educational side, but the pluses and minuses in the accounting side, and making sure it's efficient, because a lot of charities I find are very poorly run from a business standpoint. And so we help out a lot there. And then I do talk a lot, like I said, that next generation, particularly coming out of COVID, where they didn't get the same educational experience everybody else did. And we're heading into most likely a downturn in the economy. So giving them the view of entrepreneurship, and that the best time to take the chance and go be an entrepreneur is before you're married with children and a mortgage, and go do it now. And I encourage that all the time. And so that's my why, is helping other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to clarify. I'm not giving 100 million today. Just so you know. That's the vision. That's my goal. That's my vision. That's my big deal, man. I probably do 1.2 million on 12 rolling months right now. I'm looking to do another million here, but I mean, my goal is to give back. My goal is to help those who really need it, because I'll tell you, I grew up super poor as well, and I'll tell you that there was a time when my dad was an entrepreneur and lost his business, and we were on food stamps and going to the food bank, and it was Christmas time, and we're recording this right around Christmas time, and my mom didn't have money to buy presents, so she went to the food bank and she got presents for free, and then she wrapped those presents up, put them under the tree, and then we opened these used presents, and people say, "Oh man, that's a sad story," and I say, "No man, that's an amazing story, because we still got to open a gift." And that's what that's where you grow. And so this helping hand, this just somebody kneeling down, reaching down, extending their hand and saying, "Hey man, I'm going to help you. I'm here for you. I got you, brother." And that's huge in this world, because if you're in business and you've got an amazing business, and there's other amazing business owners out there, if we're in business but we don't change the communities, if we don't help the people around us, what's the point even being in business? If people say, "Oh man, they're here today, gone tomorrow. I didn't notice anything." What's the point? Then I think that as entrepreneurs, as leaders, I think we failed. So I love your why. I love the give back, the coming back and buying your business back at 39. That sounds like a whole nother show. I can only imagine what that was all about. But I think, an interesting question, for the audience here today is like, running a $3 billion corporation, what kind of meetings do you have? What does a meeting at your level look like?
It's funny you say that. I had a meeting this morning with one of my employees who said, "Rich, somebody told me that if I have an idea, I could email you and that you would talk to me. I never thought it would be true." So this morning I met with one of my employees out in the field who I've never met before. I've got about 8,000, so I can't meet them all, unfortunately. And it was just her giving me an idea on opening a new store in a certain market. And so we talked about that, and I told her to email me. But look, a lot of my meetings, outside the company, are people trying to sell us, obviously trying to get me to take their products and add it into either our sales or just operation of the company. I meet a lot with Verizon, and we have a great relationship with Verizon, all the way to the top, and they're a fantastic company to partner with. And then most of my meetings are internal meetings with my employees, and making sure we do Mark's process, where we have quarterly planning sessions. We just had one yesterday, and we have a group of leaders that get together to plan out each quarter and plan out the whole year. Again, I find entrepreneurs often don't put enough stuff on paper and plan things out and take that time to think. So we do a lot of that. And then I meet with all my employees, and look, half of it's talking about them personally, not even talking about business, because people are people first before they're your employee. And oftentimes the stuff going on in their life is more impactful in their work performance than what's going on at the work, right? So when someone's got a sick parent or a sick child, or has somebody in a car accident, or somebody needs surgery, or alcoholics, or a million other things, finding out what's going on with that and caring about the person is going to get you a lot more performance and loyalty than just saying, "Hey, let's talk about your numbers." But we meet with people on numbers as well, and it's just normal meetings. And by the way, I want to add one thing you said. I don't believe in handouts. I believe in hand-ups, and I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I love that, right? I love helping people get to that next level. And so that's my goal when I meet with my employees, is figuring out how are we going to help them get to where they want to get to as well.
I love that.
That's the whole purpose of this show, is helping entrepreneurs gain tips, better themselves, level up. I think that's what it's all about. I've heard you say, culture. I've heard you talk about, your coach, Mark, the author of Make Big Happen. Great book, right? And a great coaching program for your business. And going back to the 5 job descriptions, you mentioned mission and vision, and you talk about culture. And one thing that I've kind of seen with entrepreneurs being a part of organizations like EO is that kind of in the beginning, the mission and vision isn't always as important. It's kind of like, I don't need that fluffy stuff. That doesn't. You know what? I'm not into that. I don't need that kind of stuff. And it's like number 4 here on the list. You're talking about culture, meeting employees. What's going on in the family more than what's going on at work. For the young entrepreneur, or even the seasoned veteran that's trying to break that barrier, what is mission, vision, values, culture? Why is that so important, and why is that a miss when an entrepreneur dismisses it?
Wow, great question. So look, there's all kinds of studies out there that show that companies that are high in culture perform better financially. Plain and simple. The biggest example that people point to all the most is Southwest Airlines under their now retired CEO, right? There's tons of case studies out there on that and saying that these companies that have a stronger culture perform better financially. And at the end of the day, that's what we want as entrepreneurs. One of the things we want is our business to be profitable. And so why wouldn't you have a strong culture if you know it's going to make you more profitable? But it's also just a lot more fun that way too, right? I mean, culture is hard to define, right? People often try and define culture and say, this is our culture. And they write down all these values and say, this is what we're going to be. And that's really not how culture works, right? Culture, I describe it as like when you go to the bowling alley and you have kids, you pull up those little bumpers on the side to make sure you don't get all in the gutter. That's what culture is. Culture is we're the little bumpers on the side, bouncing our teams back into the middle to keep that culture heading in the direction we want. So you can't prescribe culture, but you can guide it. How you pay your people, how you reward your people, how you recognize your people, how you talk to your people, how you interact with your people on a daily basis or weekly basis, how you communicate with your people. One of the biggest problems that most entrepreneurs have is they just don't talk to their staff enough. And in the absence of knowledge, people will make shit up. That's going to be on my change, by the way. It's one of my favorite sayings I made myself. And so you got to communicate with your staff, and all of that goes into culture. And I'll tell you, it makes a difference. Sometimes people leave the company and they'll tell me, Rich, I really hate to leave. Our culture is just so great. I feel, such a team member, but, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it happens, but oftentimes my people stay longer because the culture is so strong. So when you have a strong culture, your employees are going to be happier, they're going to stay longer, and you're going to make more money. And those all sound like pretty good things to do if I'm an entrepreneur.
That's great. Hey, one quick question, Rich. Obviously there's a lot of talk about, the work environment and the younger generations coming into it. One thing that you mentioned, just with your work with the Catholic schools and just coaching and, the Ron Clark school down in Georgia, there's so many people right now concerned, like, how do I connect with the millennial generation, the Gen Zs, and I think in retail, I got to imagine that a lot of your frontline workers are coming from those generations. How do you continue to maintain a consistent culture across those different generations as, these older generations are kind of leaving the workforce and you need to connect with multiple generations? How are you finding that? And what tips would you give to an entrepreneur that's listening that, hey, how do I connect with these Gen Zers, the millennials? How would that work?
Sorry, I don't know if you heard my dog barking. I apologize.
Didn't.
So, yeah, it didn't. Okay, good. So it is a challenge. First of all, I heard a great speaker, his name's slipping me right now, but from the University of Alabama, he's a sales speaker out there, a sales teacher out there. And at the end of the day, he came down to, you got to treat everybody the same. If people don't do the job, you have to hold them accountable. Okay. And so when you have these younger people, yeah, they think differently, right? Their attention span is much shorter on average. Communication is a big challenge with the next generation because you and I are going to send an email. My kids, if I force them to send me an email, they will. But according to them, it should be a text message. At worst, it should be a text message. It should be, as far as they're concerned, a DM from Instagram. And I don't use Instagram at all. So so yes, there's different things you have to do when it comes to starting with them. But at the end of the day, once they're in your company, you set the culture and you have to bring them to what you need. You have to educate them the why. The biggest thing, not just millennials or Gen Zers or even younger now want, is the why. And I think, by the way, it's a question that as entrepreneurs we don't answer too often. So here's what I want to do, and we then should say, and here's why. And so what I find is as long as you give them the why, the younger generations understand it better, and then they'll buy in a little bit more. But the same thing applies to the older generation as well. The hardest challenge on them, like I said, is attention span. And the method of communication these days that they're used to is what makes it really difficult. And it's a challenge for me to communicate with my employees. I can't just record a video and send it out and expect everybody to watch it. I can't just send an email. We're having to use our app. We have an employee-facing only app, and we have to push things through the app because that's how they're used to communicating. That's how they're used to getting information. We use Microsoft Teams for internal chat. We use email as well, but quite frankly, probably half my people never open their email. That's just a thing of the past for them. They don't care about it. And so it is totally a challenge. You're right. We have a lot of young people working for us. Communication is the number one thing. Once you get past the communications, from a business perspective, you have to hold them accountable the same way you do everybody else. You can't let them be late. You can't let them leave early. You can't let them say, well, I just don't believe in that. I'm not working on Christmas Eve. You go, well, I'm sorry. Even preachers work on Sundays. So we're working Christmas Eve. Maybe this isn't the job for you. Would you like me to help you find one that you can work remotely 5 days a week? Those do exist. for right now. And, most of them are going to move offshore to the Philippines eventually. But if you want to do that, go for it. And by the way, I talk to people just like that. And once you do that, you figure it out. But it's a challenge. And I will tell you, the work ethic of the younger generation, our generation screwed that up. Because, and I said it earlier, we don't make kids work as much anymore. I mean, right now, I'm asking you said you have kids. Yours are younger. How about yours? Are yours any older? How old are your kids?
Mine are 11 to 5, so a little bit younger. But my son, it's the same thing. I mean, he's getting a job. Like, we talked about this. Like, hey, you're going to get a job at 14, 15 years old. Just setting that expectation now. And, because I'm a big believer in this. And Dave and I talk about this a lot too, is kind of an apprenticeship at times, right? And your job is to train them. I had a great mentor, and he said, you're either training your kids or they're training you. It's like there's not in between, and I think it's one of the best advice I've ever received. And it's like, what are we, so I think it is our responsibility as parents, obviously, to train that. And hopefully that don't screw them up.
A lot of kids don't get jobs anymore, not until they're in college. And I had a great expert that I was at a YPO event, and you said it earlier, EO and YPO, EO for the smaller business, YPO for a little bigger, some of the best organizations you go in for education on businesses. They had a psychiatrist there, a psychologist, can't remember which now. And the person said, look, if you want to make sure your kids aren't entitled, make sure they have a job before they turn 16 so they can learn the value of a dollar and what hard work equals. Because as entrepreneurs, we want to provide so much for our kids, we end up screwing them up. And unfortunately, all of us grew up with a generation that said we want our kids to do better than what we did, right? We want the world to be better. And that's what our parents wanted for us. And unfortunately, we made it so much better that they're not learning the lessons that we got to make it so they can compete in the real world by hard work and understanding the value of a dollar.
Hard work is critical, man. I mean, I'm going to tell you something. I'm a believer in this from day one. And, I'll be honest, it's the reason why I won't get a house cleaning service, because I'll tell my wife, like, hey, listen, those kids are going to do an hour of chores every single day. They're going to learn how to sweep the floors and clean the toilets and, clean underneath the couches. Like, they're going to learn how to do this. We could pay somebody. And before we got married, we paid somebody, but now we don't, because they're going to learn how to work. And, if my kid's going to be in therapy is going to be him in the backyard crying, mowing the lawn. And that's going to be the way it happens, man. Because they're going to learn how to work hard. And I think that, as an entrepreneur, the harder you work, the more successful you are. You've mentioned, coaching multiple times, on this call. How important is coaching, having a coach, to taking your business to the next level? And a follow-up to that would be, do you still have a coach today?
Yeah, great questions. Look, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, pick any major athlete, even quarterbacks for, Denver Broncos or the Seattle Seahawks, all have coaches for a reason. And that's because even the best in the world realize you need somebody to hold you accountable to yourself and to have that outside perspective. And so, yes, I still have a coach to this day. Mark is my personal coach. I think I'm one of 2 clients that he still coaches himself. And I believe all entrepreneurs should get a coach, particularly once you get above like the $2 to $3 million range, because it helps you, step back and make better decisions. And also it helps you grow from the experience of others. It's like kind of when you have a dog that's, a puppy by itself, it's harder to teach, but you get that second dog and learns from the older dog, it's way easier. I guess the same applies to kids, maybe, I don't know. So I think everybody should have a coach and a mentor, and they're 2 different things, right? A coach is someone who holds you accountable and sets a structure and teaches you operating rhythms and helps you refine yourself. I'll give you an easy example. Years ago, I went to Mark and I said, Mark, I just joined YPO. We got to find somebody. I'm having a store I can't open in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The city's fighting me in the stupid thing. Who do we know that can help me fix this? He goes, oh, look, it's a great call. Let's talk about it. How much do you think it's going to make a difference getting it open before the summer? And I said, we'll make an extra $50,000. He said, awesome. We should definitely talk about that. Before we do, I have one question for you. I said, what's that? He goes, how are you coming on that $5 million project you're supposed to be working on with Verizon? And I said, oh, you mean the one that I'm not working on to try and make $50,000? And he goes, yeah, that one. I said, not very good, but I'm going to stop doing the $50,000 project and go work on the $5 million one. And I was so passionate and so invested in getting this one store open that I couldn't see the forest, as you'd say, right? I just saw a few trees and realized that I needed to stop working on the $50,000 project. And so things like that, a coach helps you hold yourself accountable to yourself. A mentor, on the other hand, is somebody who you can talk to and get different perspectives, typically on your specific industry. or just in general on business ideas, right? Somebody you don't pay and you just call them from time to time. I have one guy named Eddie Smith who owns Grady White Boats. I have lunch with Eddie once a quarter. He's in his 80s now. And the amount of experience and knowledge that this guy has. And by the way, half the time we don't even talk about business. We just talk about life. And that mentorship can help me in life too. I, by the way, had the coolest thing happen when I was at Ron Clark Academy last time. This little girl comes over to me. She's a 5th grader. And she's like, excuse me, Mr. Rich. And I said, yes. And she goes, I have a question for you. And I said, what's that? She goes, would you be my mentor? 5th grader. And
That's
I
awesome.
said, I said, that's a great question. Why don't we schedule a time with my assistant and we can talk about it? And then I called Ron and said, hey, is it okay for me to mentor a little girl who's in 5th grade? He goes, Rich, I would be honored if you would mentor. Her name is Sky. She's an amazing little girl. And he's teaching these kids to get mentors. And yet most of us in business don't teach others to get mentors. Because look, you and I, we figured it out the hard way. I outgrew my dad and his experience in business. My dad owned clothing stores that went bankrupt, by the way, if the story sounds familiar, and didn't do as well. And so my dad, I outgrew him when I was a teenager. My dad wanted me to stop at one store because he thought I'd already hit the jackpot. And so I had to have other people to coach me and to mentor me to help me continue to grow, because it's a lot easier to learn from those who have been there, done that, than to figure it out the hard way, which, don't get me wrong, I figured it out the hard way many, many times. Ask my wife. She says I still figure it out the hard way.
and that hard way costs millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So I got, for the entrepreneur on the call, thinking, oh my gosh, a coach, another expense, is this going to pay off? I'm struggling, it's hard to make payroll. I think like the thing that you mentioned about EO for smaller businesses, like when I first joined EO, that was part of the issue. Like you sit in your EO group and, if you're doing pretty well, you're listening to guys, they're having issues with the family. They're having issues making payroll. They don't know if they're going to be in business next month. And so like EO is a great place for that connection. But even at EO, and the requirement for EO is, you got to make $1 million. And then but even at $1 million, they're still struggling to do these things. That was my biggest beef with EO. As you grow, is that you level out at some point. So for that person, because that's considered pretty successful. Like making $1 million is considered pretty successful, but they're still having some of these issues. What is a good budget for a coach? I mean, what do you think they should be putting towards that, and where should they be looking for these sort of things so that they can grow up?
Yeah, so look, $1 million is probably tough to get a coach, to be honest with you. I'm not saying there's not some out there. I'd probably recommend the EOS, the EO operating system.
Yep.
For the $1 million guys. When you get to that $3 to $5 million range is when you start needing a coach, I think, and that's probably somewhere in the $60,000 to $100,000 a year cost for an entry level coach. And what I'd tell you is, if you hire a coach and in 6 months they haven't made you back more than that, you don't have the right coach. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like anything else in business. You're looking at the ROI. What am I investing? What am I getting back? And so if I'm putting $50,000 to $100,000 to a coach, I'm expecting in 6 months. You're not going to see it in 60 days, but in 6 months, I want to be able to look back and say, they helped me make back at least double or triple. My rule is if I invest $1, I want to make at least 3 back. So I want to see double or triple the money back to me that I can, point and say, this is what the coach taught me, and I'm making my money back.
And so you're, and just, we're just, bouncing it back and forth, but, at the end of the day, an entry level coach is running 60 to 100 grand. And if you're taking your business from 35 million to 75 million, they're probably paying in that 200, 250 range a year for a coach.
I don't even think they're that high. No, I'm honestly, there's coaches out there that cost that much, but I think, you probably should spend, 100 to 150 probably. I don't think it goes up a ton because look, you're paying for someone's time, and I don't think you need a ton more time. Maybe you're spending more because you're going to start bringing them in for like quarterly planning offsite events where you use them as a third party to moderate the event. Because one of the best things I've learned is when I do my quarterly plannings, I sit back and watch and I let Mark run the whole event for me. And by doing that, I don't just get my ideas, I get the whole team to speak up, because once the CEO makes a decision, everybody's job is to all hands in and follow it. And I want, if there's 9 people sitting at the table and everybody has the same opinion all the time, then there's 8 people that I have no need to be there. So when we do these events, I want them to speak and say their mind until we come to that, decision at the end of what our plan is. And so that's where the cost comes in. The coach itself, I don't think the cost goes up as much as just the amount of time that you're using from the coach. So again, I'd say you're 60 to 100 start off, and then once you're doing better, like you said, 35, 50 million, you're probably 150 a year, somewhere in that range. It's kind of my ballpark that I'd say.
I love it. That's great advice. And I think that I really love what you said about having someone run the meeting. That also shows your team that, you are a part of the team and you're working together. And so I think that that's a great tip for, anybody thinking, hey, I can run my own meeting. I should have I'm going to skip the $7,500 or the $15,000 or whatever it costs for them to come in for the day, but I'm going to have it facilitated. I'm going to take that time. I'm going to grow my team. Listen, you've been more than generous with your time. It's been an absolutely fabulous call. Any final thoughts that you would leave with our audience?
Yeah, I would tell you that the most successful entrepreneurs I know failed really bad sometime in their life and figured out how to get through it. So if you're that entrepreneur that's really struggling right now and you're debating, gosh, I don't know what to do, figure it out. Don't give up. Push through it. All of us guys who made it through to where we are today at the big level started off and stumbled. Almost everyone I know stumbled hard, almost went bankrupt. I'm one of those guys who almost went bankrupt. I lost, almost $13 million one year and didn't have $13 million to lose that year. But that's when I hired Mark and we figured it out and I pulled myself out of it. So my point is, you have the support organizations, whether it's EO or YPO, you have forums, you have other entrepreneurs out there who can help you figure it out. They're not going to do it for you. But when you stumble, that's when you figure out who the real entrepreneurs are. The ones who figure it out, it makes you stronger. You become a better entrepreneur. So just keep pushing through. No matter how hard it is, you'll figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been an honor speaking with you, Todd. Any final thoughts as we bring this in?
Yeah, just thank you for the time. Excuse me. And, just the advice I think that's number one is we have a core value here is have grit. And I think if there's a definition of any of those successful entrepreneurs that I know, in my experience, it's pushing through and persevering. So appreciate it, Rich. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Listen, thank you very much for being on the call. And if you're out there listening, hit up your local Verizon store. Hopefully it's a Victra store. Go buy a phone, go buy a tablet, get hooked up. I'm Dave Westcott, and follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Facebook, follow me on anywhere where it's social. We're here 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday, every week. We're consistent and we're here. Thank you very much for joining. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.
Mike Balot from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.